Good evening and welcome to all of you and Happy New Year. It's great you can join us this evening for our webinar on task initiation, and presenting this topic this evening is Dr. Gail Wright. I'm delighted to welcome Gail to share with you some practical strategies to encourage your child to initiate and independently start tasks. And Gail, I've worked with for a number of years at West Island, and she has extensive experience of working with students in primary and secondary phases of school across mainstream and students with individual needs. Her doctorate in resilience is fantastic and is a welcome, and she provides lots of advice and guidance for parents and students on self-management and a variety of core skills that enable young people of all needs to access the curriculum. So I'm going to hand over to Gail now, and Gail will be talking to you for about 20 to 25 minutes. And towards the end of that time, we are very, very much looking forward to talking to you at the end and answering any questions that you may have. Gail, over to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Claire. Good evening, everyone, and welcome. I'm going to just share my screen. If you can just bear with me. Okay. I'd like to start off with this cartoon as it gives you a flavor of tonight's talk. I can't do my homework because my computer has a virus, and so all of my pencils and paper and pens are all affected as well. Here are some of the delay tactics that you may be familiar with. I'll do it later. I don't know what to do. I don't know how to start. I'm tired and thirsty. There might be a lot of time spent sharpening pencils, looking for materials, putting everything in the right place. There may be difficulties in organizing their own thoughts and coming up with a plan of action for initiating a task, or may not adequately analyze the directions to have a clear understanding of the expectations. And here are some comments from parents. And they've said, I can't get my child off the computer to start home learning. I remind my child to do the task over and over again. I came back 10 minutes and my child still hasn't started. Given the current situation where we're now asking for a greater level of independence than ever before, challenges with task initiation become even more apparent. When raising preteens, teens, young adults that struggle with task initiation, it can be one of the most challenging and frustrating aspects of parenting. Does your child have trouble starting tasks? Does it feel like giving hundreds of reminders every day? Is it difficult to understand how hard it is to get started? Have you experienced trying to navigate stalling, the delays, the occasional need for prompting? These show a heightened level of frustration, feeling tired, and really at a loss as to what to do. By the end of this talk, you will understand about task initiation and motivation, and will have a set of tools to activate your child's learning. Always near the start line, but finding it difficult to begin. So the challenge is activating actions to start tasks, whether this be schoolwork, chores, organization, whatever it may be. The initial task often takes far more effort than step 2 or step 3. So make that first goal manageable and get a time frame. It may be that once your child does get going, the work isn't all that challenging from there. Or your child may have difficulty getting started when other skills such as sustaining attention, planning, executing a plan to complete an assignment may also play a part in that process. So in that case, your child may be struggling with multiple skills needed to get the task done. What is task initiation? Well, it's the ability to immediately start a designated task. It's also the ability to start a non-preferred task and overcome a desire to procrastinate. Often I hear that their child is interested, they can spend hours on it. Now that's different because it's a preferred task. Why is task initiation important? It's considered to be a crucial life skill because it required to start tasks or activities and then to independently generate ideas, responses, and problem-solving strategies. It's also needed to get work done, meet deadlines, complete chores, waking up, getting ready for the day, taking a test, writing a paper, prioritizing the importance of different tasks, contact people for homework help, making social plans, starting a project, and the list just goes on. It also involves having an understanding of what is expected, the wherewithal to ask appropriate questions if there are any misunderstandings, and the skills to redirect that attention from a previous involvement, that ability to shift. Starting and completing tasks also reduce frustration and feelings of being overwhelmed. Therefore, initiating tasks without adult support is considered a behavioral cusp or a foundational skill that opens the doors to learning and experiencing environment in ways that make old behaviors obsolete. What might be getting in the way of starting tasks? Here are some stumbling blocks, because procrastination may appear to be motivated by laziness or rebelliousness, but the reality is that children put off assignments for a number of emotional and cognitive reasons. The first of which, how to get started. Some just are really unsure of what comes first or what to write for that very first sentence. So there's no plan or order of how to get started. And does your child understand the expectations and instructions? For some is there homework? Being unaware of it and no plan to check where there is homework. Have all the resources and details? Does your child have the equipment, the supplies, such as scissors, glue stick, color paper, the proper textbooks? Or it just takes too long. Your child may perceive the task as it's going to take way too long, and I don't want to commit to that amount of time. That is going to take them forever to do it, and they just don't have the patience or time. Do they have the prerequisite skills? If your child doesn't have the skills, understanding, or knowledge necessary to do the task, then there is a likelihood of avoidance. This will also affect confidence. Tired. When is your child doing the task? How long is your child spending on each? What to prioritize. So your child may look at a number of tasks or the amount of work to be done and just can't see a way through it all. Is it huge? Your child may see a project or an essay as huge because it requires multiple actions and multiple steps. Perfectionism. It can be paralyzing and prevent a child from starting a task for fear of making a mistake. Might be worried about where to start, whether they've understood the instructions, or if the work is enough, or is it good enough? Probably made the decision that if you don't start, you won't make a mistake. It's a bit of self-preservation. So being anxious can stop even the most capable from working. Sometimes the anxiety may not have anything to do with the task at hand, but still be a distraction that prevents the child from starting. The thing that's puzzling is that in anxiety-related task initiation challenges, the longer you wait, the worse it gets. By not doing the work only increases the overall anxiety, which makes starting the work even more difficult. Procrastination is fixable. Your brain is trainable. So it's important to examine whether it's a I can't do versus a won't do situation. So how can I motivate my child? True engagement requires the satisfaction of three basic psychological needs. The first of which is autonomy. It refers to the feeling that we're in charge of our lives. It's about having a choice, having a voice in that decision making, sense of ownership, control over what they're doing, freedom to adapt their space. It's important to ensure your child is part of the decision making process. Children generally don't feel motivated when they have no choice about how to do things. As this picture indicates, you cut the strings slowly, one at a time, depending on the level of independence, age, and stage of development to give more freedom. And that is commensurate with maturity. The second is competence, which refers to a feeling of being skilled and that we've achieved something. Feel a sense of progress and accomplishment, achieve a personal best. So encourage a growth mindset of having a goal and may not get it just yet to feel a sense of success. Competence refers to the belief that something can be done. If the task takes too long, looks too hard, appears to be covered in frustration and failure, then the child doesn't want to do it and will not get started. So it's important to start slowly to gain confidence and competence. The last is relatedness. It refers to a feeling of belongingness, of making connections, developing relationships, feeling safe to take risks, being able to speak their mind, needing to care about and be cared about by others and be understood. Therefore, recognizing, understanding these three basic needs is one of the most important steps to boosting engagement. The next few slides will get into the practical strategies to enhance motivation through the basic psychological needs. The first one is to make a plan. By making a plan for the task, you reduce the anxiety of not knowing what is being asked or where to start. Break large tasks into parts, manageable parts, that is, and you can write them out in a list form or write them on post-it notes that can be pulled off and crumpled up after each job is completed. There is a certain sense of achievement to take jobs off or to crumple it off and discard it. Or a visual timetable to help with organizing, thinking, planning visually or pictorially. Here are a couple of examples: homework structure and checklists. This is the one I like. It offers choice and voice. So you get your child to list all the tasks that need to be done, put all the tasks into a hat to pick one to start first. And that's also fun to do. 10-minute timer, start with one assignment that can be completed within 10 minutes. And this makes your child feel as if they have accomplished something and will motivate them to continue working. Another one is partially done. Complete the last part of the task so that the task is less daunting and can see the finished product. And this one here is the work break work routine. And this offers a chance to maximize work output by taking a break every 20 to 25 minutes. And therefore you work in short bursts. Or scaling the tasks. Work on the most difficult first so that when attention, concentration wane, or you become tired, the easiest or the most enjoyable task is left to do. Or order of activities. You ask your child to order the activities that need to be done and then to proceed to do them. Time limit. Provide your child with structure such as time limits for designated tasks. So use a visual kitchen timer or alarm clock to remind your child of when to start a task, how much time is remaining, and as an alert for when it's time to start working on the task. So it is actually promotes awareness of time, which is helpful for a child who struggles to get started. And the next one is build momentum. And just what the image says, the first step is always the hardest. So do the first step together with your child to gain confidence and to actually start a task. Once you have a chance to build momentum and practice these skills consistently, you can begin to expect more initiation from your child, and this can drive their productivity and lead to the confidence needed to independently take on bigger tasks. The next one is the big five. 5 questions to ask to ensure that your child can answer them to help with starting the task. When to start it, how much to do, how to do it. What does finish look like? And what do I do next? Or to cue your child when to start and finish. Sometimes the task can look daunting, so provide a visual cue as to where to start and where to finish for this particular session. And you can continue with the same markings of green to go, red to stop for the remainder of the task at another session. Mini deadlines. So you can help the child ensure that pieces of tasks are getting done. Smaller tasks will look more manageable in order to alleviate the too huge or take too long feeling. And this will help, the exemplar will help with understanding expectations and answer some of the unknown questions by seeing the finished product. Reward and praise. Reward with preferred or favorite activity. You praise personal best and success with their personal goals. It's important to validate your child for micro wins as they work through assignments by expressing your pride in their specific efforts and accomplishments while also acknowledging the difficulty of changing behaviors lets your child know that you understand them and support them. Again, going back to motivation with the connections and relatedness. These micro wins can also serve as a point of reference for future tasks by reminding a child how capable, in control, and confident they felt the last time they pushed through procrastination and completed a similar task. Reduce distractions. If there are a lot of things going on in the environment, it will definitely be difficult for them to focus on one thing. It's important to reduce distractions such as much as possible. Limit the amount of visual materials that they see. It's also important to keep their focus on the task. Reduce clutter around them, turn off loud music, sit in low traffic areas away from doorways, and remove devices such as phones. Study area with tools. Have a designated area as it will reduce stalling, delaying when they can't find a pencil or the textbook, a pair of scissors, charger, paper, glue stick, whatever that might be that distracts them. Model. First, if you do it yourself and model the task explicitly, then you do the task together. Finally, you ask your child to finish the task on their own. So verbalize what it is you want to do, demonstrate the process of brainstorming what you will need to do, and then organize your brainstorming ideas. When you are done with this process, be sure to make statements such as, okay, this is what I need you to get started with, and then start to do it. Ways to get unstuck. Feeling stuck can cause major frustration. This often prevents a child from moving forward and completing the task. By providing a child with strategies to work through this, you can empower them to overcome it. And here are a few examples of different things your child can do when they get stuck. They can read the instructions, re-watch the YouTube clip, highlight the key information, look at the rubric again, maybe look at the example. So lots of different things. but it's really important to co-construct ways to solve the problem with your child because it encourages voice. Self-talk. Encourage your child to use self-talk to initiate tasks. If your child can use self-talk during tedious steps of a project, then they will be less apt to grow bored or irritated during the process. Here are some questions to ask your child, which will help to identify the obstacles that get in the way of task initiation. And you can say to your child, sometimes it's hard to get started on homework. What can you do to make it easier? What can you do to make sure you keep working until the assignment is done? How can you keep from becoming distracted while you're trying to work? Tell me how you come to that conclusion. How was that decision made? What would be another choice you could have made? What can you do to learn the material that would be on the test? Let me show you how I thought about the problem when I tried to solve it. Through discussions with your child, you will have a better understanding of the stumbling block and get to the root of the issue. Assuming that it is a won't do problem when it is a can't do problem can be a big mistake, as this perspective reduces the ability to teach and nurture your child's developing brain. Generally, if children can do it, they will. Emotional development and regulation also play a key role in task initiation, as emotions are strong influencers on our ability to take action. Lack of confidence causes children to postpone getting started, oftentimes in an attempt to avoid negative outcomes. Fortunately, there are many ways to help children improve their task initiation abilities. It starts with identifying the underlying root issue and problem solving from there. With continued application and practice, child's confidence begins to grow and task initiation skills gradually improve. You can't finish a marathon without starting a marathon. It's really important to take that first step to get to the finish line. Thank you for listening. I'm going to hand this back over to Claire now.
Thanks, Gail. Really, really great to listen to some practical tasks and some strategies that can enable us as parents to get our students, our children, to engage in their work. I've just got one question at the moment, and thank you to John for asking the question, and it does align with some of the questions we got before the webinar, and you did touch on it actually, which is about online distractions. So, you know, a parent myself, my son is now in year 13, and I know that trying to manage computer games, social media, online distractions. You talked about switching phones, putting them to one side, making sure everyone's got the equipment. Is there any other tips you could give on that?
I know a lot of the assignments at the moment are online. And what I do find as a distractor for the students is that they could be opening quite a lot of tabs. And so what I often get them to do is to close all the tabs and just keep the ones that are pertinent open. I also talk to them about putting their phones aside. For some of the students, if they have difficulties managing their phone, they leave it on my desk.
Yeah.
And so that helps them manage, because when their phone dings and there's a message that comes through, they just want to look at it.
Yeah. Yeah, and Gail, I think that's such wise advice, and I know that there is some research that's been done, and you may know this more than me, about how long it takes the brain to engage in a task, and when we disengage from our phone, it can take at least 5 to 8 minutes, if not more, to immerse ourselves back in that task.
Yes, and that is really true. And it's the same thing that it happens to us. When you're
Yeah.
in the zone of doing something and then something comes up and then you have to disengage from that, it takes a while to get back in the zone again.
Yeah.
And so it's really important to set some of those parameters, the environment up for success. It's important to co-construct any plan with your child, to identify what's going to work, and to identify a plan together. Because with our students, they really need to have choice and need to have a voice in that decision-making process. Therefore, they have a level of ownership.
Yeah, and that really, that's really good advice. And questions coming from Anita. Thank you, Anita. Great to get your questions in. How do we stop ourselves from doing the work for our child when we are trying to show them how to attempt a problem? So thank you, Anita, for that question. Gail, any advice on that? You know,
Yes.
when do we stop?
Yeah, and I think it's a bit like scaffolding, where if your child is ready at step one, then they do it. But for some of the students, they may not be ready at step one, so you might have to hold their hand a little bit more at step one, and then they can proceed with step two. Other students may need their hand held for step one and step two. And it's okay to do some of those steps with your child. And initially, it may seem as if you're doing it, but at the same time, you are handing over that level of control over to your child when they feel confident and competent to take that on.
You know, I think that that's so important, and Anita and other parents that I've been thinking about this one. It can be a bit of a conundrum, you know, when do you start? But I think if you're modelling and when you're modelling and going through a particular problem that your child's working on, you're empowering them so that the next step that you said, they're able to do the next one themselves. So you're not going, oh, I'll do it for you. No. You know, this is how I would have done it. Because if you're giving that's a judgment. This is how I would have done it. Why didn't you do it like this? And as parents, and I've done this so many times myself, particularly with maths, and I think that's one that parents can find a challenge. You know, sometimes I'll hear my voice and I can sound quite critical, or I can be quite frustrated because I can see how to do it and they can't. And sometimes I just need to take that 10 minutes step away, and I almost need to take time out myself. And then come back to it and just think about my language, or why didn't you do like that? Wouldn't say that. Have you thought about this? Show me the ways you've been shown that in class, and then move from there, or even investigate together. And so, okay, let's investigate that together. So I think again, some good advice there.
Yeah, absolutely. To get unstuck. So co-construct how you can get unstuck, and it's really important for children to hear how you are problem solving.
Yeah.
And so by modeling and talking it through and talking it out loud, they can actually hear your thinking process. And it's really important. And so that they get a glimpse into your brain and how to solve a problem and how you go about solving a problem.
Absolutely, and for those of you that do find this one a bit of a challenge, I think we've all been there with those situations. Also, modelling that it's okay if you don't know, and like you say, you're thinking that out loud. So you know what? I don't have a clue how to do this. What can we do to find out? You know, maybe we can do some research and we can get on the internet together. Maybe we can look at this. And oh, but it's due in tomorrow. Well, you know what? And then you can model, can't you, Gail? Well, maybe you should have started this a couple of days before, and we could have broken that down. So let's see where we can get to. And then you just have to speak to your teacher tomorrow about the fact that you've got to this point, and we work on this together. So I think that's really, really good advice about talking through yourself, how you would go through it without passing judgment and criticism on the fact your child doesn't necessarily get it, and it's okay if you don't get it.
Yeah, absolutely. And also what you could do is you can draw on past experience.
Yeah.
So if you know that your child has experienced some difficulty with a particular task, And you can allude to that by saying, remember the task you did for whatever, design technology,
Yeah.
or something? How did you overcome that? And so just
Yeah.
to get them to think about, I've got some problem solving strategies and I'm really good at doing that. And maybe I can apply some of the things that I did previously. And so by linking up with something that they've done in the past that's been successful, it really builds on that level of competence
Yeah.
and that autonomy as well, so that they're in the driver's seat and they've got
Yeah.
that level of control back.
Yeah, that's a great idea. You could say if they're planning an essay, oh, you're a really creative person. Why don't we do a brainstorm of this? Why don't we visualize it in a different way? It's a real strength of yours. Let's look at that. So yeah, I like that, sort of crossing over those skills. Some great questions coming in. Thank you, parents. This one from Xiao. What if your child doesn't want parents to know what homeworks she or he has? I was interested, Gail, in the questions that you suggested on that slide, and I think that would go some way. Because again, you've got to think about the questions you ask. What homework have you got? Oh, blah, blah, blah. So it's thinking about some open questions you can ask that gets your child to open up on what that homework is. Any thoughts on that one?
Yeah, I often find that when with my teenage children, a good time to talk to them is around the dinner table, because when they have food in their bellies, they just say anything. And I also find that when I'm driving them around, picking them up from lessons or driving them somewhere, because it's a dedicated time, they tend to talk a little bit more.
Yeah.
And so trying to get into their head, trying to be part of their world and their homework world might be a little bit easier during those times when it doesn't seem like they're being grilled. So find a time where it's calm, a time that is conducive for a lot of discussion, and just to ask them about what's coming up with them. And you can talk about what's happening with you and your work, for instance, or something that's happening in your world. And then you can just probe them, but without sounding like you're grilling them. And what Claire said, you don't want to be judgmental, but you're just really interested. And going back in terms of the three elements of motivation is that relatedness, connection with them, and then that you're asking them to authentically want to know what's going on with their life in school, as opposed to grilling them and questioning them about their homework. So we really have to think about how you couch some of those questions as well. So it becomes almost like a coaching question.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm listening here and drawing upon what you've said, and working with students at West Island and also as a parent. And it's like, how was your day? Fine. You've got to think about, what was one of the things that you felt you succeeded at today? Might be a question in. And again, you don't sit down and you grill them. It might be as you're washing up or you're doing some chores. And again, with the homework, okay, give me a list of the homeworks, might feel like they are being grilled. But if you say, which of the subjects do you think might be the ones that might be a bit of a challenge for you to start this week? And why is that? And I think one thing you said, Gail, is about, as a parent, talking about your own challenges of managing time and your own challenges of deadlines. I think it's a really healthy thing to do, and to model that I've got this on this week and I'll need to start here. And what do you think I should do with that? Which bit shall I start with? And having those conversations that are great. And another good one, thank you, Divya, is when they take too long to finish their work, which pushes other deadlines and makes it a bigger problem. And Sophie's already, I think, also on a similar one, is about procrastination because of fear of failing or perfectionism. which you touched on, you know, managing that. Any thoughts on those?
Yeah, it is about managing that, about the reasons why your child is taking so long, and what aspect are they worried about, afraid of? Has there been something that's done in the past that they've been afraid of, or not sure of the expectations? And sometimes having a look at the end product might also help, because if they don't know what's expected, they just keep doing it in hopes that it's going to touch upon something and they'll get something right. So really need to dig a little bit deeper to find the root of the issue. And it might, it might be also anxiety as well. What are they really worried about? What are they stressed about it or anxious about?
Yeah. So again, it's using those open questions, isn't it? And I think with someone that's, you know, fear of failing, like you say, perfectionism, that might be a conversation that you don't have at that particular evening, or you know, but it might be a conversation you have when you're walking, driving in the car, shopping. You know, let's talk through that assignment you had this week, because you know, how did you feel about that when you were doing it? And, oh, so you know, okay. Well, and I noticed that, you know, you were really concerned about not making a mistake. You know, let's just explore what that means to you. You know, what is it that worries you? So I think those questions, but at the right time, are really important. I think that really is. And when Divya, thank you, talking about too long to finish their work and pushes other deadlines, I guess Divya and Gail, that goes back to chunking things down, and breaking them up into manageable tasks. So maybe they can see, you know, that post-it note goes that they've done that little bit, rather than it drawing out in one session. What do you reckon?
It is. It's a bit like time management as well. So if they know the assignment ahead of time, and perhaps to break it down into manageable parts. So so all the time isn't spent on one task and then not enough time to do something else. So just break it down into manageable parts. Perhaps you can use the list in a hat, put things in, or maybe according to the day of the week, to identify what you're going to do on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. And they could be small little bits as well that can get done in 20, 25 minutes. But if it's a longer task, you could use an egg timer as well to set the task. Okay, 25 minutes, let's see how much you can get done, and then we can roll it over to the next day.
Yeah, and I'm thinking, Divya and Sophie as well, Gail, you know, the strategy you showed where you had a little green dot, so well, let's get this bit done now, and then we can do that bit later. That might be quite a good way to work with a young person that might be perfectionist, or the drawing out a deadline too long. You know, that you mark, let's get this little bit done this evening, or let's get this bit done the week after. That might be a nice way of doing it.
Yeah, and also if they are perfectionists, perhaps to reinforce getting the first draft and going back again later on to have a look. So it's not the final published report.
That's a good way to do it. On the other side of things, Aziz, thank you for this one. What if a child becomes over independent? I know what I'm doing. I mean, I've got some suggested responses, and I think it's great, because I know what you're saying. Aziz, you're saying it's better to ask what are the best ways to entrust your child with responsible independence. So, you know, those children that, I've got it, I can do this, don't need any help. What's your response to that one, Gail? Because that causes a worry for a parent too.
Yeah, I think I think it's actually several layers at the moment. The first one is if your child says, "Yep, I got it, I know what to do," and you know there's evidence to suggest that everything is fine, and you get feedback from teachers saying, "Yeah, everything is fine, your child's on target," then you don't need to worry. I think the other thing that you want to do is you want to be part of your child's world. And so again, to develop some sort of time during the day, during the week, where you can sit down and just have a chat about what's going on. But without the grilling, or without the fear of your child thinking that you're judging and you're not you're not being nosy, I guess. I think for some of the children, that's how they perceive parents. But you just want to be still part of their life. And I think it's really difficult for parents to also make that transition, that when they come from primary school to secondary school, in primary school, there's still that dependency on parents. And so they're really happy to share whatever they've done at school with you at the end of the day. But when they get to secondary school, and it's a really gradual, that level of dependency changes to independency, and then they just want to do their own thing. And it's really difficult for parents to make that transition, to relinquish some of the really lovely interactions that you have with your child about their day. And so I think it's a couple of things.
Yeah, do you know, I was thinking as you're talking, and Aziz, thank you for that question as well, that you know, I mean, I could say I'm speaking as a parent and not just as an educator, but you know, my son's in year 13 now, and I don't have the same conversations. But if he says I know what I'm doing, or when he was gaining a bit more independence, I say, oh God, that's great. You know, what's the secret of your success? Share a few with me. I'd like to learn a little bit about how you do it. So that can be quite a nice way in. And just to listen and hear. So I would say that's quite a good one. And you know,
and it goes back, and it goes back to the motivation, the relatedness. And so your child needs to feel that you are interested in what they're saying, and without judgment, and you're authentically just want to be part of their life and want to know how they're getting on. And so it's that relatedness as well.
Do you know, we've got so many good questions, and I think we could go over if parents don't mind. Gail, do you mind going over a little bit?
I don't
Parents,
mind.
are you okay with that? Because I think this one's a really good question, Peng. Thank you. What if your child says, I've got it, but they don't and really haven't got it? And Gail, I wrote some notes as you were talking, which is, you know, you talked about expectations, what it should look like. And you know, I think Peng's question is also related to when a child goes, oh, I've done it, and you look at it and think, oh my God, that's a mess. You know, that's actually, there's hardly any detail in there, but actually they've had a go at it. You know, how do you handle that one?
I think if it's the first time that your child's done it independently, you've got to just acknowledge that. And then the next piece, having a look at it and just see how they can improve it. And if there's a rubric that is part of that assignment, then you go back and having a look at it as well. But perhaps not to look at it when the child wants to just celebrate the success in doing it. And so that's probably what I would do, is just to go back and have a look at it a little bit more. And for some of the work, if there is an exemplar, just have a look at the exemplar and have a look how they can get better at it as well. And perhaps to unpick it and deconstruct it a little bit more. And sometimes I find that students may say that they've done it, and it could be very much at a very superficial level.
And that's the tough one.
That is a tough one. And so what you don't want to do is stifle that enthusiasm, stifle that independence. And then, but what you could do is to log it. And then the next time I said, okay, let's have a look at this and see what we could and how we can do better. And again, that's about personal growth and personal targets as well, because nothing really stands still. You want to just keep building on whatever skill you have to get better and to achieve whatever that may be.
I'd agree with you. I mean, parents, thanks for joining us this evening. I think we're all in that same boat. It's a long journey, and you know, if that continues, Peng, and for other parents, as Gail says, unpack it, sit down with your child, maybe get the rubric out, email the teacher, say, you know, if you've got a rubric, I'd like to work through this essay my child's doing, or this paragraph they've done, and how can I deepen it? And it could take a number of years for your child to get there. you know, from year 7, and it might be that academic maturity kicks in year 10 or 11, or they still need to work in it in year 12 or 13. But for sure, I think criticizing it isn't going to work. It's okay. Let's have a look at the review. Let's see how we can unpack this. Is really important, because there's going to be some regular conversations you may need to have with your child on this. And by constantly saying that's not good enough, or no, that's not what is expected, it's going to shut them down. And Gail, what really struck me about this tonight, and parents listening as well, emotions can hinder students. And I think if they feel they've been criticised by us as parents, and hey, this isn't always easy, is it? When we're tired and we've had a busy day and we're working with our children on home learning, it's not easy. But emotionally, we need to be in a good place when we're dealing with this, because if they feel criticised, or they feel that, you know, nothing's good enough for you, or it's really about nurturing open conversations and picking the times to talk about the challenges, not sitting down and grilling them, and not benchmarking your child, Gail, I would say, against someone else. You know, oh, you know, he or she's 13 now, they should be able to do this, or they're in year 11, they should be able to do this. So I would say to those parents listening, don't benchmark your child against their age.
Yeah, absolutely. And it goes back to the slide on motivation, competence. So competence is not comparing yourself to anybody. Competence is actually build from one level to the next level. And so with the question about your child says, I've got it, okay, let's just start with that one, and then you can build on that as well. And so that is building on competence until they feel confident, and then you relinquish some of that the skills onto your child. So always when you're interacting with your child, just think about those 3 psychological needs. Autonomy, so looking at choice and voice, looking at competence, so looking at like a personal best, and about connection, relatedness, whether they feel as if you have their back, because it's not so much, sometimes for the students, it's not so much the actual support, it's the perceived support.
Exactly. So listen, thank you so much, parents, for joining us this evening for this webinar. We really hope you've been able to take away some strategies. Thanks so much for all your questions. They've been brilliant, and I hope you've enjoyed listening to the answers. If you have any more questions or thoughts or feedback, please fill in the questionnaire at the end of this webinar, because we'd always be happy to do some more sessions on this topic. If there's anything else that you'd like us to expand on, we'd be really happy to do it. Thanks to everyone. And yes, Anita, we will share the slides with those of you that have attended this evening, the strategies, so you've got them. So
thank you.
Take care, everyone. Have a good evening. Thanks again.
Thank you. Have a good evening. Bye.